Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Dwayne Kimball, United States Army veteran and retired VA rating specialist. Today, I'm bringing another educational video as it pertains to the VA compensation claims process. Today, I have someone here that I've been trying to get on for a while, and we're going to cover a controversial topic, and that topic is DBQs, also known as disability benefit questionnaires. And my guest is Dr. Freeman. Good afternoon, Dr. Freeman. How are we doing today?
Doing well, Dwayne. Thank you for inviting me. I think I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this interview.
I definitely appreciate it. I know we have been talking back and forth just about, as it pertains to the DBQs and stuff. And I'm so happy that you took time away from your busy schedule to jump on. And we're going to educate some veterans in that arena of DBQ. So, Dr. Freeman, just tell my subscribers and everybody out there on YouTube land a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Oh, very good. Well, I'm a veteran. My father was a veteran, and now my son's a veteran after 20 years in Navy SEALs. So we have a heart for veterans. I was actually a Navy corpsman assigned with the Marine Corps, the Fleet Marine Force. It's called 8404 Corpsman. And so I'm both in the Navy and the Marine Corps as it stands. And so I come to this space helping veterans help themselves through a contractual relationship that I had with third-party administrators for the Veteran Benefits Administration. I spent a little time as a healthcare provider and as a disability medical evaluator doing some contract work with all three of the third-party administrators for the Veteran Benefits Administration. And then I saw, actually, Dwayne, that there was a misconnect, I should say. There was a disconnect, and I wasn't feeling like the veterans were getting the quality of examinations as they deserved. And as you know, we all believe if you serve, you deserve. And so I actually started an independent division in my practice of, by the way, of preventive occupational and environmental medicine. And I called that independent division Veteran Benefits Services. And so now I come to this space trying with a whole heavy heart to help veterans get the benefits we believe they deserve.
Right. And that's awesome. And thank you for doing that, because I know when DBQs first came out, I was working at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and those DBQs are not as robust as they are today. But I went to my insurance provider's website, that link where it says find a local provider, and I pulled up 20 names to include two of my own personal physicians, and I just started calling. I called them first and I told them what I needed, and some said yes, but all my providers that I was using at the time, they said yes. They were like, yep, just come in and we'll do what it takes to get it squared away. So thank you for being a resource for veterans as it pertains to that. So next question, how long have you been completing DBQs and Nexus statements?
That's a great question. I started out, as I said, as a contractor, and I did contract work for about 5 to 7 years. And then I went out on my own, and I've been doing independent disability medical evaluations for, I think, the last 3 or 4 years. And I've actually got a lot of experience under my belt. I bet I've done not hundreds, but thousands of DBQs.
Now, I know you stated earlier that you had worked for some third-party contractors. When you got into that area, what type of training? Was it a required training? How long did it take that the VA says, hey, you have to complete this particular training to do these DBQs?
Very good. That's one of the things that is worth mentioning, that not just any private medical doctor can do this and and understand the VBA's processing and use the verbiage in which they like to hear when it goes to adjudication. So when I was working with those as a contract healthcare provider for the third-party administrators, They trained me. All three of these different third-party administrators trained us in just that, what it is that the adjudicators want to hear, what it is that they need to see, how thorough that these documents need to be done, both subjective and objective. And they gave you good training. As a matter of fact, it was very, very good training. The problem that I saw with where I was the veterans I was interviewing was saying, "Doc, I can't believe you measured my range of motion, and I've never had anybody lay hands on me before." I said, "Well, what do you mean? I don't understand. This is the way you're supposed to fill out a DBQ. You're supposed to document the subjective and objective findings. You're supposed to do a thorough medical exam." And so that's what led me to doing my own division. But the training was excellent. I got well trained. And
Okay.
that's something that's important in the private sector, because although other private doctors are well intentioned, they're not trained to the point where the VBA can accept some of their documents.
Right. And, I always, I get a lot of comments on my YouTube channel about the VA itself. Oh, the VA is bad, or some say, or the VA is good. But a lot of times when the veteran does not know this process, when they're going to the VA's website and print out these DBQs and taking it to their private providers, I was trained by the VA when they first came out. And the first thing that they told us to look for, ensure that the doctor stated they reviewed the veteran's claims file. So when you work for those third-party contractors, you have to have access to those veterans' claims files, correct?
Absolutely. And actually, those third parties allowed you electronic access to the claims file. That's a must. You must know what they're, you look at different statutes of evidence, and it's all in their claims file. I think that's imperative, not just it's important, it is imperative that a medical health provider or disability medical evaluator looks first at their claims files.
Right. And I keep mine back there as a prop. I don't know if you can
Look
see
at
that,
that. Look
but
how
that's old school. That's back when they were paper
look
claims.
how thick that
Yeah.
folder is.
Well, I have it now. The VA gives it to you on a CD. And a lot of times I tell my clients, they say, well, I want to have access to a medical professional so they can complete a DBQ. And the first question I ask them, do you have a copy of your claims file? And they say, no. I'm like, if you go out and get one of those DBQs by someone, yeah, they're going to charge you. And then guess what? It's not going to be sufficient because they don't have access to the same evidence that the third party contractors, and you have to have that.
Right.
So I'm glad you clarified that, because a lot of veterans actually, they said, hey, I went to QTC and the examiner said they didn't have access to my claims file and they gave me a negative opinion. And that's at that point, that is on the rater, because the rater has to catch that and send that exam back as an addendum and say, hey, you stated you didn't have access. Here's access or something, so they can provide the correct medical opinion. So thank you for pointing that out in the training. So moving right along, could you explain what a disability benefit questionnaire is and its role in the VA claims process? I know we talked about it a little bit, but a lot of my viewers, they hear me talk about it. They just hear me talk, but I want them to hear from someone like yourself that has been trained and that has completed thousands of DBQs for veterans.
Right. Very good. Yes. Well, DBQ stands for Disability Benefits Questionnaire, and it's a form that's necessary for any claim and contention, whereby it documents not only subjective findings historically from the veteran, but also objective findings. For instance, in a musculoskeletal DBQ, you want to know the range of motion and the limitations of that such range of motion, which will help establish the severity of that disability. And so you must use goniometry and take down certain measurements. And there's certain tools that are applicable for a proper and thorough exam. so that it's documented. You know, back in the military, if it's not documented, it's not done. So the
Exactly.
DBQs are a means by which you can document subjective and objective findings to do two things, mainly to qualify that the veteran has a disability, number one, and then to quantify the severity of that disability so that the rater will have something to go by in order to establish a particular rating.
Right. And you mentioned a word, and I did a video on the range of motion, and I was calling it gonometer. And someone said, no, it's this. And I came across a chiropractor, and he told me the correct pronunciation, but I'm from Missouri, so I always get tongue tagged when I say it. Goniometer.
Well, that's very
Yeah.
good. It's a goniometer.
Goniometer,
You had
right.
it right the first time, but you just didn't have I in between gonometer. It's
Right.
goniometer, which it's just a measurement of the ranges of motions of particular joints. Yes.
Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Freeman, because I know you had talked about that. And I did a video because a lot of veterans saying they were going to these third-party contractors and they wasn't using that measurement tool to measure the range of motion. Can an examiner eyeball range of motion and get an accurate reading of the range of motion without using that tool,
That's a very
goniometer?
good question. Now, to answer your question, which came in two parts, can an examiner eyeball? Yes. Can they get an accurate assessment of the limitations of range of motion? No. And
Right.
so, in musculoskeletal exams and filling out a DBQ properly, you must use goniometry and there or inclinometry measurements. Two different types of tools that they give you the same results.
Right. And it's important that veterans know that because as a rater, I would see, we rely on the information that's documented on that DBQ from the examiner because we're not medical professionals. We know what to look for because we were trained by the VA to ensure that the DBQ is sufficient. But I've also seen in some veterans claims file where they after the exam they either called in or wrote in and said, "Hey, that examiner did not use a measurement tool to measure my range of motion, but on the DBQ they checked the box saying that they did."
Well,
Now, whenever I rate it, I'm like, okay, that's reasonable doubt. It goes in favor of the veteran. I'm going to send it back for clarification,
right.
because
Yeah.
but sometimes raters they don't do that. They're on production quotas and they just go ahead and use what's there, and I think that's unfortunate, but it does happen. But at the end of the day, videos like this where we're educating veterans, now they know what to look for when they go to that exam. So thank you for explaining that. So can you explain the importance of a nexus, medical opinion and rationale, if a veteran is not service connected as an MD? Because a lot of veterans, they'll come and they'll say, Dwayne, I got scheduled for a CMP exam. And I'm like, well, what did you claim? They'll say, I claim a back condition and I send in a nexus. And I'm like, well, where's the DBQ? And is the nexus completed correctly? Do you have a rationale in the nexus? And they be like, what's a rationale? So if you can just expand on that based on your medical experience.
Very good. I think that's an important point that a nexus is the proof, along with the medical opinion and the rationale, that your current symptomatology meets the criteria for a current diagnosis. And that current diagnosis is connected to some injury, illness, or event that occurred while you were actively serving. So the nexus means connection. And you have to prove that your current diagnosis is connected. And you do so by rendering, documenting the injury, illness, or event that occurred while you're actively serving, documenting your current diagnosis or your symptomatology that led you to qualify as a disability, and know that there was continuity of care for that disability between the time you served and your current and your present condition. And so the nexus is almost like a great dance partner with the DBQ. I think they should go together. A DBQ documents your subjective and objective findings, and then a nexus renders the medical opinion and documents how it is connected to your active duty service. And then the medical opinion is justified by the rationale. The rationale actually leads you to peer-reviewed medical journals that has the same condition that shows causation, not necessarily correlation. There's a lot of things in that are being claimed that are positively correlated with something else, but it has not been shown a positive causation. And so the rationale with appropriate research and documented peer-reviewed journal articles that shows causation is your justification for your medical opinion that should be all documented in your Nexus, which goes together with the DBQ like a good dance partner.
Right. Thank you for explaining that because I've heard veterans, spending, a lot of money for these Nexus statements. And I was talking to one veteran in particular. He said, Dwayne, I went out and got this Nexus statement and I want you to review it. So I said, okay, well, but I want to ask a few questions first. And I said, well, where's the DBQ? And he said, well, they didn't do it. They just said I needed a Nexus. Come to find out, the veteran was already service connected. So the Nexus was already there. He was doing an increase. So there was no Nexus needed. He just needed the DBQ.
Correct.
So he went back to the medical facility. They said, yeah, we're going to charge you for that. He said, well, you all told me this is all I needed. So again, this is why I want to bring you on and just, let you tell the subscribers from a medical doctor standpoint, because I'm not, in the medical arena, like you. And these educational videos are here for veterans. So they have to invest the time to get educated and listen and learn, because it's going to save them a lot of money first, and then a lot of headache and not getting caught up in getting something that they don't need. Right. So before we wrap up, and I ask my last question, Dr. Freeman, can you give your contact information if someone needed a DBQ for increase or DBQ for secondary or direct service connection? How can someone get in contact with you?
Well, my website is the best way to contact me, and that's accessmed.com. It's spelled AXX as in X-ray, ESS as in Sierra, MED as in medical.com. And my office number is area code 337-484-1178. Again, 337-484-1178. And they can always email at info@accessmed.com. Thank you.
Perfect. And also, if you're still watching, you're going to get a treat. I didn't want to say it at the beginning because I wanted people to watch this entire video. I am going live in March. I go live the first Wednesday of every month. This March, it might be a day off, but Dr. Freeman will be my guest again when I go live, and he's going to answer some basic questions. Now, he's not going to be able to, if someone gets a question, well, Dr. Freeman, I'm service connected for these things and this, that, and other. What should I do? It's going to be general questions about DBQs and his experience with DBQs. So he's offered to go live. So be on the lookout for that. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you like and you subscribe to the channel, because he is going to be dropping a lot of nuggets and be answering your questions in real time. So Dr. Freeman, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, but I just want to give you a few seconds to just give some final thoughts on the topics that we talked about, maybe some things that veterans can do to get prepared if they're trying to get a DBQ or before they go to a CMP exam.
You bet, Dwayne. So I think one of the first things that a veteran should do is know their DBQ, know their problems, know their symptoms, know what diagnosis those symptoms can meet the criteria for, and then download the DBQ and look it over and understand how to answer those questions that will be asked at their CNP exam or their private medical DBQ exams. And so know how to answer it. And if they don't, get with their partners, their spouse, and say, look, what do you think about this? And so you can have a great appreciation of what to expect at your disability medical evaluation. And then I would say be particular with the medical provider that you seek, or you'll end up with a doc in the box or rent a doc from a third-party examiner, and it's like that great philosopher Forrest Gump says, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know which one you're going to get.
Yeah.
So I would say be familiar with your condition, be familiar with the DBQ, the questions on the DBQ. If you have a private medical examiner who's well versed in the process for the Veterans Benefits Administration, then seek them out, and know that you should have a nexus with every DBQ unless it's an increase. Know that when you have a DBQ and a nexus, you should have rationale with every medical opinion, unless it's a presumptive diagnosis, which does not require justification because it's presumed to be connected due to a terror activity or an exposure in some sort.
Yep.
So be familiar with the basics of your contention, what your complaints are, what that DBQ might be that the medical provider is going to ask those questions. Understand those questions and answer them honestly, and know that you might need a nexus, and pick a medical professional who is familiar with the process.
Well, Dr. Freeman, you just dropped several nuggets, and I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions, but definitely a lot of good information. And I want to thank you again for coming out and spending your time. And we're going to do a round two, and we're going to get into some little more questions. So veterans, active duty service members, don't fret. Dr. Freeman is not going to go anywhere, but that'll be all in part two. And as always, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and as always, share my videos with your fellow veterans. Thank you.